We're about to start shortly, if everyone could gather around.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. First of all, brothers and sisters, those of you who are coming to listen to these reflections and share with us some of the outcome of this trip, the trip that was made by, mashallah, a large group from Al-Hidaya to Al-Andalus. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you for spending your time. And hopefully, this will be a learning opportunity. And those of you who have been in the trip and you are willing to spend some time and share your reflections, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for that as well. Let me start with this introduction, and then we'll go with the rest of the program. First of all, we would like to thank our brother Sheikh Yasin for taking the initiative and preparing for this course. Alhamdulillah, it was so beneficial to the people who took it. And I think during the trip and while visiting these sites and meeting the brother Tariq as he was going through the program, it was very clear that the course was very beneficial because it gave a good background of the history of Al-Andalus that brother Tariq didn't have to go through all those details. And mashallah, many of you, brothers and sisters who have been there, mashallah, asked very, very smart questions. So therefore, taking the course and going through the trip turned to be very beneficial. So Sheikh Yasin, may Allah reward him, and we pray for him, pray for his father. I just talked to him yesterday. He said he's still very, very sick, and he's asking you to make dua for him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him shifa. Unfortunately, Sheikh Yasin couldn't go with us in this trip, and we missed him throughout the trip, and hopefully, inshallah, he will be in the next one. So having said that, let's really try to put this trip in perspective. And I'm sure those of you who were in the trip, who participated, maybe can confirm what I am saying. I said today in Khutbah al-Jumu'ah, for those of you who were in the first khutbah, I said I have studied this history a long time ago. I have read so many pieces of poetry, especially the one that I shared today in the Khutbah al-Jumu'ah, or at least some of it. I did not translate it. I did not have the time to do that. Maybe we'll do that today. But it's a moving piece of history, and it is a unique one. I think those of you who were in the trip, you have heard from Brother Tariq why this is so unique, and particularly to people like us who are living in the West, because it sets the ground for many things. It sets the ground for the future. It explains so many things that are happening right now, but hopefully it gives us that ability to understand what happened. So understanding the history of what happened in Al-Andalus is very unique and very important. Therefore, we would like to pay attention. We would like to spend some time understanding the uniqueness of this history. How did it start? Number 2, how long it took? Number 3, the sacrifices of those Muslims. Number 4, how they were able to overcome those sacrifices. Number 5, how those Muslims were able to govern, and in many cases, how they failed to govern the right way. The defeat, why they were defeated, why Muslims in Al-Andalus were defeated, what happened after they were defeated, and why they were defeated. And then we would like to understand this enemy who never stopped planning for the reconquest, as they call it, and eradicating, eliminating every trace of Islam in the Iberian Peninsula. I think all that need to be understood and need to be communicated properly to our youth in particular and to our future generations. So the trip to Al-Andalus was meant to be historical, was meant to be educational, was meant to be spiritual as well. As I have heard some of the reflections of our brothers and sisters during the trip, it is really a spiritual journey, and hopefully you will hear more. So this is the trip of Al-Andalus, and I cannot emphasize enough how important it is, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to hear from you, and we will be able to educate the rest of the community about the importance of this trip. Finally, I would like to say, as we share our reflections and share what we learned from this trip, we would like also to suggest some practical things that need to be done or can be done in order to translate this learning and this information, this knowledge into action that hopefully will benefit some others in the future. We would like to thank the brother Tariq and brother Mustafa, those who received us over there and who were with us throughout the trip. Alhamdulillah, they did a good job in really showing us what needs to be seen, and they were open for our suggestions, hopefully so they can improve on their program. So I'm going to stop over here, and then inshallah we'll go for the rest of the program. I think Hussam has a segment that he would like to show us, and then after that there will be a time for reflections, and we will continue, and there will be enough time for people to ask questions or to have comments if you have any. Jazakumullah khair.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, on May 21st, we embarked on a journey from Al-Hidaya Center. We left towards Madrid, seeking to connect with our history and seeking to gain knowledge. After a short flight, we arrived in a land that sought to be known. Landing, we were greeted by Brother Tariq, who would be our guide, our mentor, and our teacher. On our first stop, we arrived in Toledo, which was the heart of knowledge in Al-Andalus. Its legacy nourished the whole of Europe and paved the way for the Renaissance. From there, we journeyed to Cordoba, the Muslim capital of Al-Andalus. When Europe darkened at sunset, Cordoba shone with public lamps. As we stood in Cordoba's grand mosque, we were in awe, each column speaking to the eternal nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet within this grandeur, we were reminded of the stark contrast of human transgression. A large cathedral built, interrupting the eternal flow. But in the mihrab, the words, "Praised is Allah over that which they ascribe to Him," served as a testament to His divine planning and power. From the eternal mosque, we move to Medinat al-Zahra, a monument to worldly desires now in ruins. Whereas the Grand Mosque stood for centuries, Medinat al-Zahra was destroyed in decades. At Cordoba's old guard tower, now a museum, we saw dedicated efforts to illuminate Spain's Muslim past. Open for all to see, there was much to see. After 3 nights, we journeyed to Seville, the Christian capital of Spain after the fall of Al-Andalus. There, the riches and the experience of the Muslims opened a door for Christopher Columbus to sail to the New World. There we saw mosques replaced by cathedrals and Muslim architects building palaces like Al-Qasr for Christian kings. After an overnight stay, we journeyed to Granada, where we were reminded of the betrayal that led to the fall of the last Muslim stronghold in Spain. We traced the echoes of faith in the Al-Bukhara Mountains, where the last Muslims held after the fall of Granada. Amid the ruins we saw hope, a newly constructed mosque, the first adhan in 500 years, called out to the faithful. There we met Spaniards becoming Muslims, the new faces of Islam, representing its rebirth on this historic land. In the Al-Hamra, we trace the unmistakable memory of Muslim history through courtyards and palaces adorned with jewels of Islamic art and architecture. As we returned to Madrid, we visited the country's largest Islamic center, a testament to a new era in Spain. As the sun set on our journey, we were bringing back more than just memories. We were bringing back a legacy of resilience, faith, and an undeniable truth. Islam lives on.
So this is, mashallah, beautiful introduction done by Brother Hussam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. It captured the journey, however brief. So hopefully, inshallah, through the reflections that we are going to hear, hopefully, inshallah, some more explanation, inshallah, will be done. So let's see who would like to be the first one to have his or her reflection. Yes, Brother Abu Talib.
I will use note, but I can use all of those. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum, brother and sister, and my teammate, 53, all of us. Inshallah. I'm trying to breaking a little bit about the tour, the planning. Excellent. I can explain in my language. Muhammad, how I make it? I looks like I go from the door from there and come the door in here. No hesitation. Unbelievable, the tour. It's breaking my heart. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless your family. And young man, do that, inshallah, in future. We'll support you. Anything you need, inshallah. Next thing, our Amir, Brother Jafar, Imam Jafar. He learned before and he introduced us. Awesome. We learned a lot of spiritual and knowledge and lesson. This tour was unbelievable. How nice is that? How good is that? Beginning to here, over there, the Brother Tariq, you see this man. Knowledge. Person of knowledge, I can say. Everybody breaking. He's talking, his behavior. We thought he's going to do this business, maybe earn from some money, but not. I don't feel anything. He never stop and never slow down. We go in the morning, come in the evening, presentation. It's like a class. Unbelievable. 9 days is going like 9 minutes to me. It's fly. No tired, inshallah. So about these things, learning my reflection, why you see that is breaking heart. We start from Madrid, then we Toledo, then we stop in Cordoba. What is the place of Abdurrahman I, who is explored that? Before the Tariq Jaid, who is come 711, then after followed by the Abdurrahman I. He was the pioneer. Light. We can see this still there light. The verses of Quran is still in the mosque. We are exploring. First things when I go to the mosque, I thought I'm going to pray 2 rakah. First thing they start saying, you can't pray there. But we saw all of those things. Cathedral, this and that. They do their business, but Muslim can pray. You see that mimbar, they write Jesus Christ's picture and this and that. It's break our heart. Everybody is crying there. Then start from there, we go there. The Madinah Jahara, the dam is there. Every place, every single thing is a pain. It's a pain, pain, pain. What's the deal? They destroy the 800 years of Muslim rules. Destroy, like a, Persia, everything's there. But symbol is still there. Islam is still there. I feel it will nourish. It will become up again. That looks like a lie. Everything leave there to me, inshallah. The other things I like to say about this tour, Cordoba, is another place, Sibyl, the history of, and last place is Granada. While all the Muslims who is there, which is Nasrid dynasty. There's 23 amirs there. They ruled 200 years almost. But Allah, Allah knows Qada and Qadar, they lost it. Then from this place, the place of the hidden Muslims are hiding in the hill to pray. They can do it. They kill hundreds of thousands Muslim crusaders. They kill people like There is no symbol we can find there where they buried them. That's another pain. These millions of people, the Muslim, where they go? But there is all kind of things. They have symbol like they are graveyard, this and that, but Muslim was not, no. So there is nothing there. So inshallah, these things, why we do, it looks like a marching on the road. The kids are playing, our kids, young kids. Looks like this is a live place. People are, We hope, inshallah, these things will come up. Why Allah in Surah Al-Imran said, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِلُ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ. Allah make king today and down tomorrow. Allah can make it kingship again, inshallah. So, a lot of things to say. So I stop there, and other brother are going to talk some things. It looks to me, I make a hajj. Go to the Makkah, I feel better than that. We seeing these things, all Islamic relic, it was make me, the expectation I have more than enough. I thought it's going to be tour, see those things, do this and that is not. It is way more than that. So inshallah, our next generation, young generation, inshallah, explore this place, make a plan, visit tour like that. Our step, Brother Imam Jafar said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar in the car. I'm crying. Said, why is Allah praying place is not there? Why is not those things there? So it is pain. Allah make this place, save our other generation like Palestine, people in India, people in China, oppression everywhere. We have to learn from this how they save the ummah. So Allah give us everybody's ability to work together, make the Muslim ummah as like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam make it his ummah. We have to keep up with that. Know the history, know these things, then we can wake up, inshallah. So I'm going to stop there. Inshallah, next person talk. So, inshallah, I hope our trip was very, 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 very good and excellent. It was awesome. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. All right, who would like to be the next person?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I had a lot of reflections in Spain, but I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm going to try to keep it focused on the two places that I felt I reflected the most on. The first one was, I'm sure everybody can agree with me, the Masjid of Qurtuba. The thing that I think when everyone stood at the minbar. So to give a sort of a backstory to people who weren't there, it was a masjid made by Abdurrahman I, and then it was forcibly converted to a cathedral. A cathedral was built in the middle of it, and they tried their best to wipe out all remnants of Islam from it. They just kept the arches. But 100 years ago, they discovered the old mihrab buried behind like a wall. And the ayah that was there was Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. So obviously words couldn't describe how everyone felt when they saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First, the only person losing in the whole situation was the Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't need any of us to be there to create the masjid. He could have preserved it himself, and He did preserve it Himself. Even though they tried their best to wipe out masjids all across the country, they didn't somehow, through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, they didn't take out this part. It was definitely something to look at. And it goes to show that when we're focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's gonna help us. But when we become subpar, when we deviate from Him, He doesn't need us. He can use who He wills. It doesn't matter what race we are. Obviously, you can see throughout history, a bunch of races have become like the leaders of Muslims. Obviously, like the Ottoman Empire and Arabs, all people all around. So the point is, when we're following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses us for good. But when we become subpar, it's definitely our fault. And I feel like the Muslims, they felt 2-3 times they got in Al-Andalus, when they were about to become destroyed by the Christians, help came from North Africa in the form of Murabitun and Muwahidun, and they became complacent with it, and they thought that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would keep sending people. But even then, at the end of the day, in the last time, no one came to help them. And another thing that I thought was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could still, with His power, make it today fully a masjid or fully a cathedral. He could have made it so that it could still be a masjid right now where we could pray in, or it could just be a complete cathedral and have any trace of Islam removed from it. But it stays there today as a sort of a painful reminder of what we had when we were following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do and who He can use to preserve what He wants. And the second thing, I was kind of just, when I was looking at the Al-Hamra, which was built by the Nasrid dynasty, I was a little confused because they were, for those who didn't see it, it's really giant, it's really grand. It had a bunch of gardens. It's really beautiful. I mean, I'm sure, see the picture right there? That's the Al-Hamra. I mean, it's really beautiful and it's really giant. And at the same time, while they were building this, they were fighting against other Muslims with the Christians. And I thought to myself, why are they decorating their entire palace with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And why are they doing all this with ayahs of the Quran and names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they're not even following any of it? What's the intention behind it? What's the purpose if they're not gonna follow any of all that is decorated with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But they made gardens and the pools of water to visualize how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described Jannah in Surah Rahman. And they really went all out in the imagery in the Al-Hamra, but they weren't really following any of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I was still confused as I was going throughout the whole place. But I think as I was leaving, or I think later throughout the day, I realized that it's similar to what we are right now. How many lessons did we learn in Spain, and how many are we actually going to follow? How many lessons do we learn here every day, and how many do we pick and follow, and how many do we ignore like we never learned it? So I feel like they did the exact same thing. They used what they felt they wanted to follow, and they didn't follow what they didn't want to follow. And that's, I feel, exactly what we Muslims are doing today. So that was something that I also reflected upon.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Actually, just to comment a little bit on the confusion that you felt, and I think you answered yourself, which is true. When we change the practice of Islam to becomes just mere habits, or it becomes mere culture, we take from it whatever we like and we leave whatever we like, that's when the beginning of the decadence will start. That's exactly what happened over there. And as a matter of fact, one observation for those of you who can maybe noticed, between Qurtuba and between Gharnata, there is a difference. Qasr al-Hamra, that which is the writing over there, most of it is not Quran. While in Qurtuba, almost all of it is Quran. What is in Al-Hamra, so much of it is poetry in praising the Amir and the rulers. All right? Yet, what is written in the Masjid of Qurtuba, most of it is praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ayat from the Quran. And I think it tells you the difference in phases of time as well as in the commitment of the rulers who were at that time. Now, all right, I would like some sisters also to start participating. Who is ready?
I'll go.
Well, we would like, if there are some of them who would like to say them, that's fine. Otherwise, we can read some of the reflections that were sent by the sisters. Yes?
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so before I wrote mine down, but first, I just want to say that the first half of the trip, I don't think I really got the lesson that I was supposed to be getting. I don't think it deeped for me. It didn't sink in for me until the second half. So when we visited Masjid Qurtuba, it was the first half, and I remember coming back after, and everyone was talking about how they cried and they got emotional, and I was like, I didn't. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I was like, oh, it's pretty. Like, oh, it sucks that happened, but I wasn't feeling what I feel like everyone else was feeling. And then Allah, He opened my heart during the second half when we were in Granada and when we were, like the second half of Seville. And day 3 or day 4, I remember when we were in Seville, Brother Hussam pulled a few of us aside and he asked to record reflections. And I was like, no, I don't have a reflection. Like, I didn't reflect on anything. And that's when I realized that I wasn't getting what I was supposed to be getting from this. So then I started taking it more seriously, and, alhamdulillah, Allah opened my heart. So I just wanted to say that first. So June 2021, we had a conference with Sheikh Yasir Qadi here, which led me to coming to the realization that I wanted to study political science in college. I was a junior in high school at that time. Now, 2 years later, this Spain trip has led me to another big epiphany, which is that now I know what I want to do with my future and with my education. After seeing everything that I had learned about in real time, walking through the towns that used to be Muslim, the churches that used to be masajid, and hearing Brother Tariq's amazing lectures and lessons, I've come to understand that I have a role to play in this revival of Islam and this mission of bringing the history back. During one of the presentations, Brother Tariq played a clip from a documentary in which a brother was speaking to a Spanish sister who had just come to know about her heritage. And one of the things that he had said was something along the lines of, they can't erase what's in our hearts, and as long as the memory is still there, the truth can still come back. I want to be a part of the process of teaching and educating our Muslim youth and Muslim communities at large about their Andalusian legacy and the revival of Islam in Al-Andalus, and I want to have the effect that Brother Tariq had on me on others. With my already not too shabby level of Spanish, some effort put in can help me reach a level of fluency, and I think that it would be a waste to throw that opportunity away. Like I said before, I studied political science and my concentration is global politics. Studying the history is how we can derive lessons to implement into the future, and a big part of the fall of Andalus definitely had to do with politics and power. I learn about how the world works now, and I'm making it my goal to learn about how the world used to work, and putting that knowledge together to find ways for the betterment and growth of the Ummah, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. And actually, that's one of the reasons we would like to have this trip, these reflections, to be translated into actions. And I'm glad this opens the door for some future plans, inshallah ta'ala. All right, who would like to be next? Any of the sisters would like to be next? Yes?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm grateful and thankful to Sheikh Yasin because he have this class. I always love history. When I embarked on this journey, I was like not expecting to have like also like spiritual journey. Thanks to you, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Jafar. Because to see it in real life and then to your memories, it just connect, you know, like what you learn in class and you see it, you just like imagine the people at the time. And then for me, it's like the best is the comparison between Masjid Cordoba and Madinah Zahra. And you can see that how Allah honors Abdurrahman Dahil by having his legacy still lives on there. But you know, his grandson, Abdurrahman III, you can see that Madinah Zahra becomes a ruin. And then that's just like, for me, it's a reminder that if you do something for the sake of Allah, your legacy, inshallah, will live on. But if you seek for the pleasure of dunya, it will just last for maybe decades. That's it. And then the second thing is, I think, I'm still sad because you know the Muslims in Spain is still oppressed. It doesn't sit well on me, and I also mentioned that in Spain that you know like we see that how you know how the Japanese, when after the World War II, they are held accountable for the damage they have done, how they revive back the cities, recompensate people. And then I look back also the war, the Bosnian War, and how the UN Tribunal War held them accountable. That you know Serbian commander, and then it's 1992, but this happens in 800 years ago, and there's nothing done about it. I think this is just something wrong about it. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have the knowledge. But I wish that, you know, like the youth maybe, you know, like take some actions, you know, do something like, you know, study more. I'm sure there's proof, or, you know, like those treaties that have been signed, we have to dig more and then, you know, help them, you know, like put something effort to push them to, you know, like to start something so that the people in Spain is like, you know, give some justice to them. Like, you know, the last, I forgot what's in the new Muslims, the Baraka restaurant owner, Brother Qasim, I think his name, that he says that when someone asked, you know, like, what can we do to help you? I think Brother Zafar was asking, and says, help the Muslims in Spain, basically he's asking. So this is something I think that we should help on, I guess. That's all from my side. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you. Can we go for another brother? Yes?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think the brothers and sisters here have said many of the things that I really took away from this trip, but I think they're important to reflect upon. So I think it's important even to repeat some of the things that have been said here. There are so many reflections that I had during the trip, but there are three main ones that stuck out to me. The first of which is when we were in Masjid Cordoba and we were at the mihrab and we saw the verse. Someone will have to remind me, but the one where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the victor. And this is my main reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always the victor. The Muslims will sometimes win and they will sometimes lose. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always wins. If we are on His side, then we will be among the victors. If we leave our deen and we, you know, leave for the sake of dunya, we will not succeed. So I looked at the history and how people were conducting themselves in the earlier years. The Muslims in the beginning, starting with Tariq ibn Ziyad and Musa ibn Nusayr, you can see how with a few number and with strong iman that they were able to take on armies many times their size and to accomplish things that have never been accomplished before. And you could see, especially in the case of Abdurrahman I, his journey from his family being thrown out of power, his 5 years going across Africa and making it into Al-Andalus, and first starting the beginning of Masjid Cordoba. You could see with that pure sincerity and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has been rewarded, and he had inspired many people in order to help and preserve his legacy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had helped him be among the victorious. But as we heard as well, one of his, a few generations down, grandsons, Abdurrahman III, he had called himself the Khalifa. There was unmatched wealth in Al-Andalus up until this point, and much of Europe was paying jizya to him. Yet when he did things, alhamdulillah, he was a Muslim, but when he built Medina al-Zahra, he got distracted and did it for the sake of dunya, to the point that he had missed 3 Salatul Jumu'ah in a row. So Medina al-Zahra, which we saw a little bit on the slideshow, is a phenomenal complex, and only a small bit has been excavated. It was only discovered recently. It should have been a city which would never fall. It is in such an amazing position on a hill. You can't come into it except from one side. You can see miles ahead of it. It is incredibly well defensible, yet it fell within 80 years. And it fell to Muslims. Why? Because it wasn't built for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this leads me into my second point, where when you do things with pure sincerity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will last. And we saw this through Masjid Cordoba and Medina al-Zahra. Now, the third point, on a better note, which I had noticed, is there is a lot of good history. Now, as a Western revert, I'm very proud of being a Muslim, but from the history that I see and the history that I know of, it had all been foreign to me. I come from European descent, and everything is from Africa and the Middle East and Asia, and there isn't exactly a place for me to fit into this and to be proud of being a European, but to learn about the legacy Al-Andalus held and the immense scientific discoveries and the real work that was done, which actually led the rest of Europe into the Renaissance, that has been covered up. It really sunk in with me and made me appreciate being a Muslim. And it makes me think back, I can't remember the name of the palace, but when we were in Seville, we visited a palace of a Christian king. What was it? Al-Qasr. Al-Qasr. Yeah. Oh, Al-Qasr. Yeah. We visited a palace of a Christian king, and it was full of Arabic writing, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, verses, a little bit of verses of the Quran. There was also some other poetry and praises of himself. But at that time, Islam was the thing. There was nothing that matched the culture, the achievements, and everything about it the Europeans had envied. We have an incredibly strong history, but we don't seem to know it and to appreciate it and to be proud of ourselves. So I think my reflection here is, as Muslims, we need to be proud of our heritage, we need to be proud of what we have done, and we have to be unashamed of being Muslim. We have to, have this true iman and ikhlas, and want to do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be proud of doing so. There's much more I can say, but I think I will leave it here. And I appreciate you all for listening to me as I ramble a little bit, but thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. As I visited some of the sites, right, the ayahs of the Quran, they were like ringing in my head. Like for example, Madinatul Zahra, right? The ayah of Surah Dukan, when they took so much joy building these buildings and cities and worldly things, when the power was taken away from them, heaven or the earth, they did not cry for them. And that's exactly what happened, as Brother Ryan says, the person missed 3 Jumas in a row. That was one. The second shocking thing, the guide for Masjid al-Qurtaba, he knows Muslim history. He's a Yahud, he's a Jew. He knows Muslim history. He knows about the madhab. He recited Quran in Arabic. Well, when he came to Shahada, he was silent. He did not say it. And that just, in my head, I was like, is it Summum Umium, or what is he like? I don't understand. And maybe perhaps you can reflect on it. Why is like that? Is it some conditions or criteria that has to be met? And the lesson I learned in there was, Allah doesn't need a Muslim, really. That was the main thing I learned there. Like, we are lucky to be there and to even to do something about His deen. And that's just the reminder that I keep on getting. And to be honest, I don't really like history, but this trip was really, really nice and educational, and it gave me a lot of reminders. And I'm scared, and I'm trying to scare my wife now too. And alhamdulillah, it works. She got scared once, so I'll keep it up.
Jazakallah khair. Just to remind me right now, when we were in the Masjid of Qurtuba, and that Jewish guide was explaining to us, and he had so many details, right? But you remember what Sister Rafina told him? Does anybody remember what Sister Rafina told him? She said, there is only one thing left. You can do it. Say Shahada, and that's it. You have all the necessary information. What's stopping you? And actually, Brother Tariq also told him, there is only one step left. And that tells us it's not the knowledge, it's not the information that we know. Guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows what's exactly in His heart. But what we know for sure is guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can know all the Iblis. He has a lot of information. But we know what Iblis did. But still, we pray for all the people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them to Al-Islam. Khair. Next reflection. I'm sorry? Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. It's interesting. Usually when I'm in front of a large group like this, I'm usually shy. I'm nervous to speak in front of everyone like this. But alhamdulillah, a main takeaway I got from this trip was that I was able to build confidence within myself by learning the history and reconnecting with the history, and more importantly, being confident and building my confidence as a Muslim and as a person. So that was really a good takeaway. But the main sort of reflection that I want to bring up with everyone, and I feel this is we'll put it into perspective, especially for our Muslim youth, is that the history of Al-Andalus, what the Muslims did there, and what happened to the Muslims there, and the extraordinary effect it had on not just Islamic history, history as an entity, world history, the innovations and everything that was done in Al-Andalus and the golden age of Islam, that affected history as a total, and all of that it's essentially erased and neglected in our public education systems. I had the pleasure of going on this trip with so many great and innovative young brothers and sisters, and mashallah, I see a couple younger brothers and sisters in here. So I think like we can relate to this point that, we're, from this perspective of public education, I've been through it, a lot of people of my peers have been through it on the trip, and like a lot of people I've talked to, that we're like fed this like twisted narrative in school that is essentially, it's like glorifying the perspective of the Europeans. Like there's so many examples, like one example is like the Renaissance. Like in school they tell you it's like a rebirth, like that the Europeans, like they had these amazing innovations, they had these advancements in like philosophy, art, science, government, and out of nowhere from the Dark Ages, like they somehow had this like random like rebirth. But like the reality of the situation is that like the Muslims in Al-Andalus, like the scholars, the scientists, the innovators of them, and in the golden age of Islam, they were the ones who influenced the Renaissance. They were the ones who set the path for the Renaissance to even happen. Without them, it would never have happened. Another example is like the age of exploration. Like we're taught in school that like these explorers, these sailors sail from their homelands across the seas and have these like amazing seafaring adventures and land in these foreign lands and establish new homes and establish relationships with the natives, establish trade relationships with them, and like, there's back and forth between them and the homeland and the new land. But no, like the reality of the situation is that like these were not explorers and sailors, they were conquerors. They took these lands from the natives, and in order to like conquer these lands, they had to slaughter these people, they had to move them out, they had to take them out. Like literally, Brother Tariq told us in the Journal of Christopher Columbus, like he saw, like once he landed in the West Indies, he saw on the hill a mezquita, like mezquita is Spanish for a mosque. On the hill he saw a mosque, and he saw like the natives wearing the traditional like Muslim garb and Muslim clothing. And that just shows you like, that's literal proof that like Islam has been here way before like he ever entered these lands. They've been with the natives, they've, alhamdulillah, they've converted the natives, and they were here way before he came. And it's sad because once he came to this land, like he got rid of them, he slaughtered them, his people slaughtered them in the name of like Ferdinand and Isabel. And I have so many more examples, and I'm sure like a lot of us like young brothers and sisters have a lot of examples too. But like the point I'm trying to make here is that I feel like our like Muslim youth are, we're in like a dangerous standpoint right now, because they're being taught something that is not correct. And I feel like we as like a community have to like address this and do something to help our youth, because subhanallah, like it's very possible that like people, like our youth, can grow up and like go their whole lives without knowing the real history of their roots and their faith. So I feel like as a community that there's something that we should address, there's something we should do. It's a systematic issue with the education system. Like it's not the fault of the teachers, they're doing what they're told to do. It starts from the top. So inshallah we'll try to hopefully come up with a solution. But and I'm a little over. Just to like on another point, like just a small reflection I had. Like this trip was like, it was life changing for me. Like the way I was able to like reconnect with my faith and my roots as a Muslim, like I just don't think I would have been able to like do that in my life if I didn't go on this trip. So alhamdulillah, Imam Jafar, Khazam, Brother Tariq, everyone who made this trip possible, may Allah bless them, may Allah accept their prayers. But yeah, like I've built myself so much as a person from this trip, and inshallah I'll be cherishing this like throughout the rest of my life. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
All right, sisters. One more reflection from the sisters.
Sorry. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum salam.
I don't really have a formal reflection. I'm kind of just bouncing off of what folks here have talked about tonight. And Brother Ryan, and what's your name? Sorry. I can't hear, but this young brother here, his reflections kind of sparked some ideas in me as well as to kind of things that I've been thinking about but haven't been able to put words to. And that is the complete erasure of Muslim identity, living in a Western society in the US. I was born and raised here. I went to Islamic school for the formative years of my life, but then after that, it's just trying to assimilate and trying not to stand out in any way whatsoever among your peers. That's something that I'm sure every young person here, I see a lot of youth group kids here, young brothers and sisters, I should say. So I know that a lot of us here have had to go through that, and I would also agree that this trip was transformative in that seeing the true enlightenment and the true glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the Muslims in Spain at the height of this civilization were partaking in, that was really a stark reminder and kind of a slap in the face, I know, to some of us, because I know a lot of us that grow up trying to fit into Western society, we learn about things like the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and we're sitting here thinking, what are our people doing? What were our people doing during all of this? But then they never once tell you that the reason all of this happened was because of the innovations of Muslims before them. And that's very intentional, and I just think that it's important for us all. I heard over and over again that, oh, it's so important to know your history, it's important to know your roots and all this, but it wasn't until this trip that I realized why, and it's because you see firsthand all of the innovation that has been erased, or it's been erased in terms of giving credit to who did it, because they don't want you to know that you are part of this history and that this is part of the deen. This is part of your duty as a Muslim, is to strive for this kind of innovation and to center Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that you do. And I know many of the youth that were on the trip who struggle with that sense of Muslim identity and tend to idolize Western society. A lot of us were, again, slapped in the face and reminded of what is truly important. And it's really hard to put into words how I felt on this trip. And even what I'm saying now, I don't even think does a fraction of justice to how I'm feeling, but I just think that the trip overall was really, really important for those of us who have been struggling with a sense of Muslim identity, especially growing up in this country and not having known really any other sense of strong Muslim community, and actually seeing why it's so important to want to be a part of that, to want to partake in your community and to not stray too far from it and to not shun that other that is part of you, that your parents have been trying to teach you, that your teachers at the masjid have been trying to teach you. I think this trip was really the only way that it could have been hit home for a lot of us. So,
Jazakallah khair, mashallah, it's so beautiful, and I can't emphasize much on what has been said earlier. Let's find ways to translate this into action. I'm afraid all these feelings will die down, and then after a while, we tend to take it for granted and forget about it. Please keep communicating with each other. Keep relaying these ideas to each other, especially you, young people. Come up with something. Come up with a form where something will be tangible. To come up with some suggestions. Maybe you will communicate with the schools around. Maybe you will communicate with the educational department in the state. Maybe you will come up with something. Or writing, have a journal, or write a book, have a magazine, talk about these kind of things. I believe these need to be translated into some action. That hopefully what happened to this generation will not happen to the next one. This is the way we learn. So please do your best to keep in touch. So don't let this die. Don't let this flame, this energy after this trip, don't let it die. Let it be translated into something tangible, something that the next generation will benefit from it, inshallah ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a unique experience because I understand Spanish. And so there were statements made in Spain that are very unique, like fingerprints of the Moriscos. They use that all the time. I didn't know that. This is the first time learning about that. So everywhere I went, I saw Islam, even though just like the statement fingerprint of the Moriscos, I saw that everywhere. You see, for example, going to the bathroom when we stopped off, there was a lot of privacy between the stalls. That doesn't exist through Latin America or Europe. Those are the places I traveled to. Also, the way they spoke their Spanish, there was still like the Arabic feel to it, you know, like certain letters that don't exist in the Spanish language, like the hard H and the hard K. Yeah. Yeah, so and also the friendliness, like they were very friendly. Like my wife, she wears niqab, and she said she felt that's the friendliest place she been to, where we traveled to. And we traveled to Canada and different places, but they were very friendly, and I was shocked to see that they were very friendly. And there's that conversation that they're having in Spanish about their heritage, which is the Islamic heritage. And one gentleman, he's a very popular author. He actually made that book about the fingerprint of the Moriscos, and also about the flamenco culture that came from the Muslims. He was saying that he came across a young boy that was making wudu. And he asked the young boy, why were you making wudu? Oh, he said, this is what I saw my parents doing, you know, before they made prayer. And this was a Catholic kid, and he was making wudu. He demonstrated how he was making wudu, the hands, the feet, everything, just like wudu. And there's a lot of things that even through Latin America that we learned from the Spaniards. And now we learned that they were Moriscos too, like our family names. There's out of 3 of them, they're from Morisco's background. You know, the last one is called Saints, so I'm not sure if that's Morisco, but we're learning a lot. So there's connecting the dots now. Now we're understanding why we do certain things. So this travel, this experience was eye-opening for me. Alhamdulillah, I don't see them as weak as some people are putting them. They just happen to be in that situation. Because we can look at China, Palestine, Kashmir, and on India now, and China, and so forth, and we can't say that they're really weak Muslims because we're here in America. We can show up, most of us will go to work, but we won't wear our thobes. We won't wear our kufi, you know, and that's facts. You know, and then, so what I learned from this experience is not to judge them too harshly, because who knows where we're going to be in 50 years from now. You know, we're not guaranteed to be in America for very long, based on that experience. But alhamdulillah for this great experience, and it was very eye-opening, and alhamdulillah. And I think they're going to get stronger, and inshallah, one day I see it, the reconquest is coming, you know, inshallah. Might not be in this century, but in a few centuries. Oh, and a brother made a comment about European Islam. The Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria, Bosnia, those are European Islam. So it's been there, it's always been there, alhamdulillah. So that's why I have to say.
Jazakallah khair. All right, we are coming, inshallah, towards the end of our reflections. Not immediately, but if you are enthusiastic, we can go on.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There were a number of things that I thought about while I was there. I was impressed by the whole country in terms of the land usage. You know, there was just incredible amount of farming, particularly olive trees, sunflower, and everywhere they had lots of crops, very well organized in terms of, you know, how they were being grown. And it's nice to see that somebody is doing it, even though they are not Muslims that are doing it right now. But Muslims need to start doing this again. And now I can see why they were so, when the Muslims got there, why they did so well, because it is the incredible geography and the climate that is so helpful, you know, when the Muslims are there in terms of, and you read about this in the books, and in terms of the Muslims, you know, introduced the orange trees and a lot of other trees in that area, and it was um, farming and the growth of the products, food was incredible at that time, the time of the Muslims also. The other thing that, really when I think about all this expensive palaces and then, a society that possibly could have withstood the advancements of the Christians, and it didn't. And that may have to do with the fact that as we become involved in the life with all these expensive things, the clothing, the houses, the food, and everything else, it just makes a society weaker, because I think all the society needs to be together, and when there is too much of a gap in terms of lifestyle of the rich and the very poor, that itself leads to competition, and that then at the time when the Christians started attacking the Muslims, maybe that was a big part of the reason why the Muslims were not able to withstand their pressure from that side. And we are again, unfortunately, even in this society, I think there are many of us that are too involved with our own lifestyles as opposed to what exactly we are supposed to do, as opposed to what we are actually doing. And I remember when Brother Mukhtar first came here, and I talked with him, and I think the very first lectures that we had, one was about the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, and then we talked about this sense of justice and the importance of justice in terms of Islam. And I think that, part of the problem in Spain may have been the fact that the entire society was not moving forward at the same level as they perhaps could have been. So I think there was a difference between the very poor and rich and the poor, and again we have the same thing going on in all the Muslim countries right now. And another thought that I've discussed that with Sheikh Yasin, I've discussed that with some other people also, with Rashid Naim, who's a professor of history, and I've spoken with Ben Mukhtar about this thing also. I think on the staff of the masjid, we should have a historian. We should find somebody, some imam who is specialized in history. We should ask, have some of our kids go into colleges and study history. I don't know how many people know that the US government has 4,000 historians working for them. They are within the ranks of the government employees. They have more than 4,000 historians that the government has. They need to be on top of things, and I think certainly many of our masajid need people who specialize in sociology, who specialize in history, because we need guidance from everywhere we can find. And I think that we need to change the structure of forget about the big things, the structure of our local societies. And I think that is something that we are trying to do actively over here, in terms of what is a community, how do we communicate each other, how do we, move forward together. And part of that, I think the things that I have said and have, is that we need somebody to teach us history and to connect us to our past, and to use that for present advancement. And also sociology would be another thing. And one of the, the sad thing today, I read, and I haven't read the whole thing completely. There's that Israelis are, they're looking for 10,000 Indians to move to Israel. And the objective clearly stated is they want to replace the Palestinian workers with the Hindus. So I think there are more bad things coming, and we have to withstand all of that stuff. We have to restructure our societies. I don't know why, I had seen a picture of somebody coming from outside the country, one of the ministers, who came by his own private plane. When our ambassadors or prime ministers come, can they just come and, on a regular flight? Why do we, our rulers live in such, wealthy lifestyles? And of course, then they're not connected with the rest of the people. And of course, they have different goals than the people have. And I think there's whole society needs to be structured. We cannot do anything about that. But there's a lot we can do in this masjid. And I think that we should sit down. We will, the board, as a board, we'll talk about it. And I think as imams, we'll talk about it. But I think at all levels, there should be discussion in terms of really creating a model community that somehow sets this bar at a little higher standard, higher level than we have at this time, and makes this community even better it is, and hopefully influence others as well, inshallah.
MashaAllah, Brother Khalid, good suggestions. And hopefully, inshallah, we'll do our best to live up to that level and improve. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Sister Rafina?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Ridwan is going to read the poetry, but I just want to give the context before he reads the poetry. Walking down the streets in Spain, sometimes some of us felt like the others were staring at us Muslims, especially the women with the hijab. At the hotel, when they heard the adhan, some of them were turning and looking, and in general, it felt like people were looking at you. I shared this with my group already, but one day we were in the center and were waiting for the rest of the group to join us in Seville. One young lady kept on smiling every time I would turn and look at her. Just before leaving, I went up to her and I said to her that I noticed her smiling every time I looked at that side, and asked her where she's from. She said she's from Syria. Then immediately asked if she's a Muslim, and she said salam, and we exchanged our salams to each other, and then she said she's so happy, content, and peaceful seeing us greeting each other and talking and saying salams to each other, etc., kind of implying that, she's not able to do that. This poem is dedicated to her and each of the people who were kind of looking at us in a mysterious way. Ridwan's going to read it.
Ridwan, can we hear the poetry?
Bismillah. O mysterious admirer, I see your longing gaze, yearning to soar higher. But you're not just a spectator, you deserve to be seen, to shine brightly like a star in the night serene. As you wander through Seville's historic streets, where Columbus brought treasures, tales of feats, know that it's you who brings riches untold, from every corner of the ummah, a love to unfold. To bring a sense of belonging, strong and true, to grant the freedom to call upon what's due, to resound with remembrance, loud and clear, to embrace the brotherhood you hold dear. Before the end, there will be people to join, united in the purpose of life to purify and embezzle, to surrender to the divine in devotion and grace, a collective journey towards serenity's embrace. So let your light break free from its hidden shell, sparkle like a pearl as all the pearls compel. And when gathered together, your brilliance will unfold, radiating the divine nur, the light of the eternal pearl. في أيضا another sister's reflection I also have. Okay, shall I read it? This is from Sister Hamida. She's not here with us, but she sent a reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us that He will complete and protect Islam until the Day of Judgment. If today the Muslim world is weak, we need to look into our hearts, our attitudes, and our lifestyles. When we design our inner beauty, our world will be beautiful like in our Prophet's time. I saw those signs, وَلَا غَالِبَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and no one was able to erase Lafdul Jalala, Allah's name, no matter how hard they tried, everywhere in Andalus. I felt it wholeheartedly, and I believe that the way Allah will resurrect us from a small DNA after we die, the same way Allah will resurrect Islam in Al-Andalus. I pray that Allah will use us to be part of this awakening. Okay. Bismillah. I would like to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to the Al-Hidaya community, Imam Yasin and Imam Ja'far and the team, Brother Hussam, for giving us this incredible opportunity of connecting with our brothers and sisters in Spain. It reinstills the aspect of how and why we should be making dua and efforts for our brothers and sisters in Spain. It made us realize that even showing up is a means of immense support for them. Through the educational and recreational aspects of this trip, it would have never occurred to me how my simple presence as a Muslim will immensely impact their existence. Just like how our bus driver cried deeply, struggled for words, and his hands were drenched with his tears, expressing intense gratitude for our presence in Spain as his brothers and sisters. This trip was a reminder to exercise empathy, sensitivity, and kindness towards our brothers and sisters in Islam, to be better Muslims. How we need to refocus on our purpose of existence as Muslims, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and support the ummah. We must reflect on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by An-Nu'man ibn al-Bashir. The Prophet ﷺ said, "You see the believers as regards their being merciful amongst themselves and showing love amongst themselves and being kind, resembling one body, so that if any part of the body is not well, then the whole body shares the sleeplessness and fever with it." This trip has left a profound impact on my psyche. Moving forward, I will carry this piece of history as a memory and share it with others extensively. It is imperative that we keep reminding ourselves and the generations to come of the history of Islam and Muslims.
We are allow one reflection from the sisters and one from the brothers. Then we are going to stop reflections, and then we will come to, inshallah, our conclusion.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to start this by saying I'm probably going to get emotional, so I apologize. I think I came on this trip in the beginning not knowing what to expect. I thought of it more as a little bit of a vacation to get away from the realities of work and life here in America. I think the first thing that really hit me, and I think I hit every single emotion on this trip. The first, I would say, the Mosque of Cordoba. Just seeing the mere beauty of it, and also seeing how, you know, at the end of the day, there's a cathedral right in the middle of this mosque, brought anger to me. So that was the first emotion I felt like, because we were told before even walking in that we were not allowed to pray. So knowing that this is a mosque and how beautiful it is, and we're not allowed to pray, and seeing all the Arabic writing around me, and just closing my eyes for a couple of seconds and just imagining 40,000 Muslim people praying there, and just the endless rows of columns, and I think that was very beautiful to me. I didn't really feel too emotional at that point. I think where it really hit me is when we went to the Mosque of Granada. We walked in, and just seeing the garden there and seeing Al-Hamra in the background, smelling some of the scents that I smelled, seeing the pomegranate trees, seeing all the flowers around there, and then making wudu and realizing that, I'm standing on the ground where millions and millions of Muslims were killed, right? And I have the privilege to be able to walk in to the Mosque of Granada and pray. Little reflection, walking into the mosque, there was a non-Muslim brother who was behind me, who was very curious and wanted to come into the mosque. So the guard actually allowed our group to come in, and he told the non-Muslim brother, the only way you can come in is if you can pray. And I think one of the reflections I got from that is, we need to be thankful to be Muslim, right? We need to, if I wasn't Muslim, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to walk into that mosque, right? And it made me reflect, and I know like, this is probably where I'm gonna get a little emotional. My mom, she is a reverted Muslim, right? She was a Hindu, and I just thought to myself, like, imagine if I didn't have the chance to be Muslim, and imagine if I was that non-Muslim brother who wasn't allowed into this mosque, right? And walking into that mosque and just seeing the architecture in there and seeing the beauty of it and being able to pray, I think that's when the emotions really hit for me. I went and prayed my turqa, and when my head hit the floor in sujood, I just started crying. At the time, I couldn't say why I started crying, but I was very emotional, and I teared up, and I stayed in sujood for a very long time. And then it really hit me when Brother Tariq, when we went to the restaurant Baraka, and he was asking for our reflections. And when I was sitting and talking among some of the young brothers, and I was telling him my reflection of the mosque there, he was saying it reminds you of the Day of Judgment, and we made that connection of how the Day of Judgment, if you're a good Muslim on this world and you get to the gates of heaven, how easy it is for those gates to be opened if you do good in this life. So I think that was really my reflection. I felt so many more emotions. I have so many more reflections. I can keep talking. I think coming back here, I still am in awe that I'm back here. I like working today. I just, my mind was still there, So I think we need to be reminded that what happened in Spain is a genocide. We didn't use that word while we were there, and it's hard to say that, but it was. Muslims were killed, and there are conflicts that going around the world right now, and we need to remember that. Look at what amazing things there are in Spain, and the reflection that you can take when the whole ummah came as one, and how great our society was, and how beautiful it was when all the Muslims came together. So I guess that's my reflection. Thank you.
Somebody? Come on.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. The first thing I want to say is Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen for being given the opportunity to go on this trip with my Muslim brothers and sisters and being able to sit at the feet of our shuyukh and learn about the importance of knowledge. And one of my favorite statements is how al-Muslimu kal-ghaythi aynama waqa nafa. And the first question to myself when I went on this trip and I learned about these people were the Moriscos. And my question to myself was how they held on to their deen after being pulled away in every single direction from Islam. They were being pulled away. They had to keep a Bible next to them whenever they prayed. They had to eat pork. They had to drink wine to show that they weren't Muslim because of the consequences that came to it. And for nearly 8 centuries, Spain was under the Mohammedan rule. And these Muslims, they showed the Europeans how a civilization is built and the importance of knowledge and learning, which was present everywhere except in the Catholic Europe. And these Muslims knew how to read and write in a time where the European nobles didn't even know how to write their name. And a few of the things I want to ask them is how they held on to their iman when their own children were being forced away from them and being raised in a religion that didn't side with their own, and how the masajid were converted into churches. And when we were walking from Seville to Granada, we would see how many of these churches were once masajid. We're walking, we're taking pictures. We don't realize the history that's behind these masajid, these churches, and they were all once masajid that our Muslim brothers and sisters were worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in. And I think I just want to feel what the Muslims of Granada felt when this masjid was built after centuries of not having a Muslim community around them, and being able to finally hear the adhan 5 times a day until today. And my second part of this reflection was the leaders of that time, and who were they? They were the ones who were like a star illuminating the sky as they entered Spain. They were the ones who gave the minority of the Jews their rights after continuous persecution. They were allowed to worship and rebuild synagogues after the Muslims arrived. They built 300 libraries, 600 masajid, 50 hospitals in Qurtuba alone. They produced genius scholars such as Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, who studied at the feet of Imam Malik himself. In Seville, we had Abu al-Khidr. He wrote Kitab al-Falah, the book of farming, and al-Zahrawi, who was a master of surgery in science. But many of the West had to travel to Al-Andalus to seek knowledge, such as Michael Scott, and he translated the astronomical tables of Al-Khwarizmi. And when it came to leave, they weren't able to carry anything except with their 2 arms. They could only carry they could only take what they could carry. But instead of taking all of their clothing, and they decided to take their books. And one of my favorite heroes, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, he was loved by everyone, even the disbelievers. And the language he understood was the language of the Quran and Islam and Iman. And I just think he would have cried at the apathy of the Muslim leaders today. And the last thing I want to say is, Allahumma astakhdimna wa la tastabdilna.
Jazakallah khair, mashallah, beautiful reflection. Okay. The last one. This is the last reflection.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So just wanted to say that I know we all learned that Andalus was opened by Tariq bin Ziyad, so kind of was drawing a lot of parallels and reflections on this trip, and the first one being that Brother Tariq is the one that greeted us when he kind of opened Andalus for us. But he constantly reminded us that this part of history was a template and a recipe that was being followed today and repeated throughout history, and he stressed the importance of learning from our history. And it was hard not to draw parallels between the things we were seeing throughout the trip with what is going on today, however little, like looking at Madinat al-Zahra, something that was supposed to be like this grand place. It was built to be kind of powerful structure, built to show the power. And I kind of had to draw a parallel with the cities and maybe our Muslim world today that are being built to show like the greatness of this country and the wealth and all that, and how that was so easily demolished. And so to me, like I can see that in the present day and think about how little that is in the grand scheme of things, and how Allah might not preserve that. And obviously we drew a lot of parallels between the suffering of the Muslims and the suffering of the Muslims today, as people did bring up. And another parallel that I was bringing, or not like a parallel, more of a reflection, is that we talk a lot about our youth like losing their deen today, and they're not being active, and and how they're losing their deen, and as if it's like, it is a phenomenon that's going on. But walking through the streets in Spain and looking at people on the streets and wondering if they had some ancestry that were Muslim, and thinking about how they are today, and it just made me wonder about like our youth today and how we should make more of an effort to keep it, because we see the result of not, even though it was forced, we see the result of not having deen in their life. And it kind of reminded me that closer to the Day of Judgment, how like there's not going to be any really Muslims around, and that kind of was terrifying, like to walk through the streets and wonder that. Like the Sister Sinzi was mentioning about like being beneficial rain, and Brother Tariq mentioned that like Muslims back then were known as like golden. Like if you are a Muslim working for you, then you've struck gold, and that really struck me, because I feel like that was my biggest takeaway. That like we can talk about systems and structures and communities, and those are all things we should be doing, but the thing that I took away the most is doing things on the individual level. We're a community filled of multiple individual people, and we can do things on the individual level, make sure that we are like that gold that people strike, and we are here in like the Western world, we deal with a lot of non-Muslims, and they should, when they meet a Muslim, they should know what they are meeting, they should know what to expect, like the ingredients to the recipe per se. One of the things like that was stressed also, the fact that we don't conform to what like the society is perpetrating, because we don't conform, we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when we do that, then Allah will give us like the victory. People will come to us. We don't assimilate, we integrate, and I feel like that was something that people did mention here today. But yeah, my biggest takeaway was doing things on the individual level for the sake of Allah with sincerity and intention. And yeah, just drawing parallels constantly there. I didn't really mention much about the history, because to me it was more like those little takeaways, and just thinking about what I can do instead of like what we can do. And I know here we're talking about what we can do, but my takeaway is like what I can do and how to present myself, especially working in like a non-Muslim environment. I want non-Muslims to see me as somebody who's trustworthy, and I want them to meet other Muslims and say, I know what that person will provide me, what kind of benefit they will bring by having them in my life. Yeah, that's it.
MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khair. It looks like we are coming, inshallah, to the conclusion of our program. I just want to make sure that we have a summary. Number one, I think this was well organized, and thanks to everybody who participated from all of you. I think it was a teamwork. Everybody has done a good job. And on the top, it was Hussam. MashaAllah. Good organizer. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. All the way from the beginning until the end, he did a good job. And he was patient. MashaAllah, he took care of all of us. He looked after each one of us. MashaAllah, that was beautiful. And everybody else who participated. Don't forget that Brother Tariq is expecting that you send your reflections and your, what did he call it? Your feedback. So that means he will show that his program is, mashallah, working and doing well. So make sure that you send your reflection. But I have a suggestion. This suggestion is maybe for Hussam, but for all of you, is all these reflections, if we can summarize them in a very, very short summary in points, and maybe send them to Hussam. What I would like to do, all of us, maybe we can come up with a booklet, small booklet, that we call it The Trip to Al-Andalus. And we record in this booklet some of these ideas. Rather than extensive reflection, we can really summarize it into just points. So then it can be recorded and it can be easily remembered in the future. That's number one. Number two, as we suggest, I think we need to keep this debate going on, even if it is just chatting among yourselves, and then try to produce this into a plan of action of what can be done. Because otherwise, this moment, this heat of the moment will go away, and then we'll just forget about it. I really would like us to capitalize, and if you need, we can meet and maybe have a plan of what can be done. So, thank you. We were supposed to have the poem of Radwan, but probably many of you have heard it, so probably we can share it some other time. Now it's time for Maghrib, and we have to conclude. Anybody has anything before we close? Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nothing new, but it's just you mentioned it multiple times about something needs to be done. Very simply, hearing from Brother Fayyaj and other people, something that can very simply be done is put together lessons as though you are a teacher, as though you are a professor of the parts that are missing before the Renaissance, or the parts that are missing before, the age of exploration, amongst other things. Okay. Yeah, and we should be able to offer this to the history teachers in the schools. And if they're not responsive to that, all of our children need to know that. And that should be a template for other things, whether it's the history of Muslims across the world, I think we need to know, we need to be very proud of, for example, the history of Iraq, of all these countries, and what Baghdad used to be before the country was destroyed. And people should know that, destroying that country was the crime of the century with regards to this past century, amongst other things. So there should be very strong pride in a good way of who we are. So, creating some lessons, because ignorance was not bliss when it came to this. You said this yourself, basically. Being ignorant of our history kind of led to some misery. But now you know. Now many of you know. So turn that into tangible actions. One of the simplest things is you all have, one thing you did benefit from learning is how to synthesize and how to write and how to produce presentations. Do something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this history and have it benefit our students first in the community, the teachers at large. And we should have aspirations to change the way curriculum is taught in this country. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakumullah khair, everybody, for your participation. I think it was wonderful, good reflections. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward for everyone who facilitated for this to be done in a successful way. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Let's call أذان رضوان.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم صل على محمد. المفروض هذا فرض.
صلي عليه.
المفروض على وقت الوقت.
الوقت عنده وقت.
صحيح.
المغرب عنده وقت.
تأجلها.
لا احنا مش متأخرين يا شيخ. الله يجزيك خير. صلي على النبي. يلا رضوان.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله